What happens when you dig too deep?
My name is Jason Cataldo. In 2019, while investigating the ritualistic gang rape and murder of a local girl, which was covered up by police, I stumbled on one of the greatest conspiracies in human history. Since then, I've been receiving death threats online and in person.
When I know people would kill to keep hidden.
This channel is the only thing keeping me alive. This is
DOUCHECODED.
Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Jason Cataldo, and this is episode 1A of DOUCHECODED, entitled The Dead Girl in the Pit. Hit that subscribe button right now because you're going to want to stick around for this series. Things are going to get
Real weird.
While I do not have all the facts, nor do I have an absolute understanding of the events or what they mean, one thing I can assure you is that all of this happened, and I'm retelling it to the best of memory and ability. I have no reason to lie. The names of the people involved have been changed to protect their identities. In early 2019, a homeless girl with severe mental illness was found nude at the bottom of a deep pit inside an abandoned building. A number of people had linked the location to incidents ranging from clandestine meth production, common vagrancy, all the way to claims made by the bums living there that the site was being used for human sacrifices. Even though her body was found naked and had shown signs of having been violently raped, the police wrote the crime off as death by exposure. I'm no saint, but I had had contact with this girl on several occasions while commuting to work, and I knew something did not add up here. This is her story. I would often find Karen panhandling at the entrance to the downtown McDonald's. Several times I had spoken with her and offered her money and food. She seemed polite and personable. The other vagrants that frequented the spot were typically intoxicated and were only pretending to be hungry in order to get money for their drug habit. She was different. I never knew her real name. She was just another one of those known unknowns, people that you see frequently but know nothing about nor have any understanding of their life and its struggles. I had heard that there was a girl found dead at the nearby paper mill ruins in my city, and I had noticed the girl was not at her usual morning spot panhandling, but at the time I had not yet put two and two together. A few weeks rolled by and I ran into Mike, her cousin, that was typically seen with her and another girl while they panhandled. He approached me with an exasperated look on his face and began to tell me a strange, unnerving story, by the end of which I knew I had to look into this. Mike told me that his cousin was last seen entering a car with several local black gang members that frequented the nearby homeless facility and made their living selling K2, which is synthetic marijuana and highly toxic, crystal methamphetamine, as well as heroin to these unfortunate nobodies. I once volunteered at the facility, and I was aware that it was a haven for criminal activity. I recall watching a young man being brutally assaulted by friends of the staff in a back room. I never returned to volunteer again. Mike's claim was that she had been with another girl when this gang of hoodlums pulled up in their hoopty whip and told her to get into the car. She initially had refused, but they continued pestering her until she had agreed. When she had gotten into the vehicle, they told her to hand her phone over to her friend because she was not going to need it where she was going. That particular line has burned a specificity in my memory that I will never forget. Her cousin then went on to tell me that a few days after she had vanished, he was walking down the street when several police rolled up on him and arrested him under the suspicion of having been involved with her murder. He claimed they had taken him to an interrogation room where they had used illegal tactics to produce a confession. Having mental health issues himself, he eventually caved to their demands and admitted to the murder of his own cousin. However, when the public defender's office pointed out the fact that he had been hospitalized at the time of the murder, their entire case fell apart. He said while he was at the station, he overheard police joking about her having been found with semen dripping out of her anus and vagina, and how no one would care if she was dead. After Mike had been exonerated, the case was officially marked as a death by exposure. I remember reading a short article in the newspaper about it, and I wish I had had the foresight to save it, as locating any information about this case is nearly impossible. I've scoured over various records online and off in an attempt to locate her real name, but it is almost as if her entire identity has been erased. I seem to recall one of the homeless I had spoken to about her mentioning the newspaper didn't even get her name right in the article, and no obituary was ever published. The more I looked into this, the more curious I became, and eventually, against all better judgment, I went to investigate the actual site of the murder. The building in question had belonged to a major big business in the area, but they had fallen on hard times and the site was eventually closed down. The majority of the facility had been torn down, but the power plant building was still standing. I remember when I was younger going to the building to explore, and one summer even camped there with a few friends before it became a hot spot for criminal activity. Eventually, after returning to the location, I found the pit where she was found, the space still surrounded by the police line "Do Not Cross" tape, with the outline of where her body had been found still visible. It looked no different than one of the crime scenes you would see on television or in a movie. However, surrounding where her body had been, there were dozens of strange glyphs and sigils painted around the area. I recognized several of them from occult-related books I had read as a teenager. One of the symbols that stood out is the sigil of the Archangel of Death, Azazel. I took several photographs of the building and the crime scene, with special attention paid to capturing the numerous glyphs that surrounded this pit. I knew that there were some major importance inherent to these strange signs and symbols. At the time, I did not believe in God, but having spent several years in prison for a non-violent, petty crime, I was well aware that evil is real, and attributed her slaying to the madness of a Satan-obsessed local gang in an isolated incident. I had no idea how wrong I actually was. This concludes part 1 of the presentation. Stay tuned for part 2.